I'm Brett Johnson. The United States Secret Service called me the original internet godfather. Now, how do you get a title like that? Well, in my case, 39 felonies because, well, 38 just wasn't enough. I was placed on the United States Most Wanted list. I had an escape from prison. Did you really escape from prison? Yes, I really did escape from prison. And if that weren't enough, I also built and ran the first organized cybercrime community. It was called Shadow Crew. It was a precursor of today's darknet and darknet markets, and it laid the foundation for the way modern cybercrime channels operate today. Those 39 felonies that I mentioned, they had to do with refining modern financial cybercrime as we now know it. So think credit card fraud, phishing attacks, stimulus fraud, synthetic fraud, you name it. I was on the ground floor of developing, refining, just outright doing it. And yes, that will get one sent to prison, deservedly so. So I guess the question is, well, okay, why am I up here today talking? And the answer is, I was able to turn my life around. I was. A few days ago, there was a plane in Brazil, Veneto, Brazil, that crashed. It killed 62 people that were flying on. And I watched the video and I saw some of the comments about that. And it took that plane 2 minutes to fall out of the sky, an absolute lifetime. And I kept thinking, I was like, that's enough time that the passengers absolutely knew what was happening to them. Not only did they know, but they had time to go through the fear, the anger, the depression, and even some of them would have had time to accept their fate. And I you can call me narcissistic, but I kept thinking, what would I do if I were in that position? And I kept saying to myself that I hoped that I would be able to sit back, finally, after I got through being scared to death and angry that it was happening, that I would be able to sit there and look back on my life and say that the story that my life told was the story that I meant it to be. Now, I'll be honest with you. That whole crime stuff, that is absolutely not the story that I wanted it to be. But the really funny thing, the weird thing, that doesn't appear that is the story I'm telling. I was given the chance to turn my life around through my sister, my wife, and then finally the FBI. They gave me the opportunity to use the information, the knowledge that I've acquired from basically a lifetime of crime to do good, to try to help protect people and businesses from that type of attacker that I used to be. So that's what I'm doing today. That's why I'm talking up here today, because I'm able to bring some insight and some knowledge and some understanding of the criminal mindset that most people on the planet don't have. So if you'll bear with me, we're going to talk about why criminals tend not to change their methods of attack. So let's start with this, okay? So there may be people out there that are concerned about zero-day attacks, those unknown vulnerabilities that, we see a lot of security companies that are talking about, well, you got to watch out. You got to watch out for all them people out there that they have these exploits. You don't even know what they are. You don't know what they are, but they're using them against you. Well, here's the truth of the matter. I don't give a damn about a 0-day. I don't. In my 20-year span as a cyber criminal, I had access to 2 0-days, only one of which profited. I will tell you this. If you are waiting on a 0-day attack, an exploit to profit, you will starve to death. What am I worried about? I'll tell you what I'm worried about. I'm worried about 90% plus of every single attack using known exploits. You want to know how the threat landscape is developed? Right there's the answer. 90% plus of every single attack uses a known exploit. It's not the stuff we don't know about. It's the stuff we do know about, typically the stuff we've been told about that we're not doing anything about, that creates that entire threat landscape. You take all the media out there, a lot of the security companies out there, they like to paint online attackers as these upper tier computer criminals, these hackers that are able to break into any type of computer system they want to, like, no. Those types of attackers are out there, but their numbers are extremely small. The 98 and 99% of attackers, they're just very good social engineers. They know what it takes to manipulate you into giving up information, access, data, or cash. They're not computer geniuses. What they rely on is 90% plus of every single attack uses a known exploit. But it gets worse than that. 56% of companies have experienced a breach because of third-party access. Most companies have no idea how many third parties are accessing their systems. Of those third parties accessing it, they're never vetted. Think about that. They're never vetted. Your system, your network is only as strong as the weakest device which accesses it. If you don't believe that, just ask Marriott how they were breached. Third-party access. 41% of every single router on the planet has the default password. Yeah, think about that. 41%. That's your home. That's your bank. 41%. Any idea what you can do with a router with the default password? It's not good. It's not, I mean, it's good for attackers, but it's not good for anybody else. 92% plus of every single breach begins with a phishing attack. Let me say that again. 92% plus of every single breach begins with a phishing attack. Why? Well, why would I potentially spend years trying to brute force my way through an industrial proof firewall when the only thing I need to do is send an email to someone sitting behind that firewall? I get the exact same access. It saves me time, effort, and cash at the end of the day. And how successful are phishing attacks? Well, if I'm looking at spear phishing someone, if I'm looking at targeting you specifically, it's about 87% effective. 87%. I don't care. I don't care how much cybersecurity awareness training you've got. I don't care how educated, how uneducated, what your position is at the company. It's still 87% effective. Now, why is that? Well, a lot of people say, well, there is no patch for human stupidity. Now, that's a cute line, but that is not true. The answer is you're dealing with an attacker who understands the technology and human psychology enough to manipulate you into doing what they want you to do. Now, all those things together, that creates what we call this threat landscape. That's the area that criminals scan and look for ways to attack you or your organization. All right, 0 days, yes, they're out there. They can be very damaging. But what we are worried about more than anything are the existing exploits that criminals use every single day to profit and victimize you, your employees, your organization. Now, what's interesting, excuse me, got a drink here. When we're talking about criminals, and I was a criminal I began my life of crime when I was 10 years old. 10. I'm from Eastern Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky is one of these areas like the Panhandle of Florida, parts of Louisiana that if you're not fortunate enough to have a job, you may be involved in some sort of scam, hustle, fraud, whatever you want to call it. My mom was basically the captain of the entire fraud industry. And I mean no crime too big or too small. This is a woman who at one point, she steals a 108,000 pound Caterpillar D9 bulldozer, trams it down the street. At another point, she takes a slip and fall in a convenience store, tries to sue the owner. That's my mom. We had a neighbor she acted as a pimp for. That's my mom. My dad was a good guy, but the problem with my dad was he became the enabler. He wouldn't stop it. He would co-sign on to any crime she wanted to commit. If she wanted to abuse someone, he wouldn't step in the way. He wouldn't try to stop it. He would just let it go. Finally, my mom leaves my dad. I was 10. My sister Denise was 9. We moved from Panama City, Florida, back to Hazard, Kentucky. And my mom was a very negligent parent as well as abusive. She used to leave me and my sister at home for days at a time. And the thing is I get the worst parts from my mom and my dad. My mom, of course, I get the criminal mindset. My dad always had this fear of the people that he loved leaving. And I get the worst parts from that. Mom's the criminal mindset. Dad is, I get the fear of people that I love walking away from me. So mom would leave me and my sister at home for days at a time. And I was the kid, 10 years old. I'd post up at the window, look outside, see if she's coming home. Sometimes I'd Sometimes I'd walk out into the driveway and just wait in the street, hoping that she would, be driving down the street. My sister Denise was not like that. Denise was just a child, 9 years old, that was just angry all the time. So my life of crime begins. Mom had been gone for a few days. We didn't have any food in the house. Denise walks in one day. She's got this pack of pork chops in her hand. And I'm like, "Where'd you get that?" And she's like, "I stole it." And I'm like, "Show me how you did that." So she takes me over. She shows me how she's shoplifting food. And I'm like, "Best idea ever. Let's do that." So we start shoplifting food. There's a Kmart across the way. Well, Kmart's got a hell of a lot more than food. And it becomes this perverted form of Maslow's hierarchy of needs: books, games, jewelry, music, toys. Yes! Until mom comes home, sees all the stolen loot, asks where it came from. I stand up, 10 years old. You can't lie very well when you're 10. I stand up. "We found it." She's like, "No, you didn't find that." My sister Denise. Denise is 9 years old. She never lies at all. She stands up. She's half proud. She's half pissed off. "We stole it." My mom looks at my sister. "Show me how you did that." And she joins us. Not only does she join us, but she calls her mom to join us as well. We become this intergenerational shoplifting ring in Eastern Kentucky. Used to take these road trips. They'd go to J.C. Penney's and steal clothes and jewelry. I'd go to the bookstore and steal books because it's the guy that I am. And here's the thing. Please don't think I'm trying to say my childhood resulted in my choices as an adult. That is not true. My choices as an adult are mine. But when you're a child, you can't help that. You're going to do what the adults in your circle are doing. When I became an adult, I absolutely chose that life of crime. That's where my life of crime began. So I'm 54. When I go to prison, I don't get out of prison until I'm 41. I go back. Yeah, I get out of prison at 41. I go back, get back out when I'm 44. So I was a criminal, an active criminal, for 30 years, until I was given that opportunity to turn my life around. And I absolutely know the criminal mindset. I know because I still call myself a criminal. I choose not to break the law, but I still have that criminal mindset. I still have the temptations. I still have that thought pattern. Absolutely, I do. I just choose not to victimize people. I choose to use the knowledge that I've got to help people instead of hurt people. And what I'm here to tell you today is that we criminals do not change the way that we attack people, the way that we seek to victimize people, unless something forces us to change. The rule is, don't fix what ain't broke. If I'm doing something that's profitable, so when I used to be an active criminal, when I would plot out a crime, I would read white papers. I would read indictments. I would read all the news stories I could find, all the articles I could find. I would do all the research I possibly could on that one specific type of crime. And I would prepare and I would test and test and test to make sure everything was working. And then finally, once I knew everything was working, I would hit it as hard and fast as I possibly could and try to profit as much as I could in the shortest amount of time that I could. That's the way that criminals operate. As long as that attack method works, as long as that attack method is profitable, why would I change anything at all? It took me time and effort are money. It took that to prepare and become successful. Unless something makes me change, I'm not going to change my method of attack. So bear that in mind. And I've got a few examples to illustrate that for you. So you take credit card fraud. Over the years, credit card fraud and I was on the ground floor of developing online credit card fraud. Credit card fraud, by and large, has not really changed much over the years. It's not. You still buy it's called CVV1 numbers on the internet, or you can buy dumps, which is the track 2 information where you can encode your own plastic cards and go out and shop physically. The fraud itself has not really changed. You've had a few things have changed, like around 2010, 2011, we saw criminals and security companies were talking about browser fingerprints. How did criminals know that? Well, because we keep on top of the news and the developments of what's going on. We were aware that security companies were talking about browser fingerprints, about being able to identify one specific user by their device, by their behavior patterns, everything else, their browser fingerprints, the IP, the language, the operating system, the Java number, everything else on there. You're able to take all of that information and basically identify one user out of potentially millions. That's a problem if you are a criminal online, because a lot of the times you'll use the same device or you'll want to mimic the person whose account you're taking over, and you need that browser fingerprint to match. So criminals at that point in time were very worried about that. That forced a specific change. Criminals had to come up with an answer on how to spoof a browser fingerprint. And there was a couple of programs that came up. FraudFox was one of those. There were these browsers that would allow you to spoof browser fingerprints. So it forced that type of change. You take SIM swaps, for example. SIM swaps have largely remained unchanged. Why is that? Well, because they're highly successful. They're highly profitable. They're not very expensive to do, and they're extremely effective. So why would a criminal, if he's having success with a SIM swap, why would he try anything else unless something forces him to do that? Phishing is the same. Phishing's been around for decades. It's largely not changed. Why? Because it remains extremely successful, extremely profitable, and it gets cheaper every single year. Criminals don't change unless you force them to change. I'm the guy, for you Americans out there, I'm the guy that's responsible for your tax returns being delayed every single year. Yeah. Yeah, I created this thing called tax return identity theft. All right. And that preparation that I mentioned, I ordered tax code books. I tried out all the software. I tested for a couple of 3 months, every single thing that I possibly could. And I over prepared before I actually started to break the law. And it was very successful, and it remained successful for years. Why would I change anything if it's working? So that's the key that we're getting at here. Criminals don't change unless something forces them to change. So why am I talking about that? Well, there's a few things that are going on these days. AI is one of them, right? Why would a criminal use AI if he's already largely successful in the types of methods of attack that he's doing? He wouldn't. He wouldn't. Now, that doesn't mean he won't later on. That doesn't mean you don't have the fringe elements of crime that are out there testing it and seeing how effective it is and things like that. But by and large, criminals do not use AI. Something has to force them to change to do that. All right. So let's talk about, I want to talk about a few things specifically that have happened in the criminal underworld that have caused criminals to change. When I ran Shadow Crew, we did not have the Tor browser, the dark web. Okay, it was just coming into being. The Navy had developed it. It had not went open source at that point in time. So all these criminal forums, all these criminal groups were on the surface web. So for those who don't know, just in case you don't know, you've got the internet is composed of three different parts. You've got the surface web, the deep web, the dark web. The surface web is basically anything that Google can find. All right. That's about 4 to 5% of the internet. The other 95% of the internet is called the deep web. That's stuff that cannot be found on Google. That's anything that's behind a paywall. That's all your emails, your bank statements, stuff on Netflix. It's anything that does not come up on a Google search. Okay. Within the deep web, we have the dark web. How big is the dark web? Well, the thing is, no one knows. Estimates say it's about 15% the size of the internet. So 3 times larger than the surface web, but we really don't know because there's no search engine for that. Okay. So what happens is when these criminal groups like Shadow Crew start up, the birth of cybercrime as we know it today, all of that takes place on the surface web. Okay. It's very easy for law enforcement to find those groups, to target those groups, to identify those individuals who are on those groups, and to throw those individuals into prison for many years. How do I know? Because that's exactly what they did with me. So that precipitated a change on criminals' behalf at about the same time that the dark web, the Tor browser, goes open source. The thing is, the Tor browser, if you know how to use it properly, which is a huge caveat, it allows you to remain anonymous. So criminals started to use that in response to law enforcement's effectiveness at targeting criminals that were using and communicating on the surface web. It forced that change. It gets a little bit more deep than that, though. So, absolutely, the dark web was beneficial for getting criminals off of the surface web and helping them to remain anonymous. But the problem is that over the years, the dark web has continued to morph because there's a lot of criminals on there. And criminals really don't care who we profit from. We will absolutely profit from other criminals if we can. So you've got criminals that are trying to scam each other. There's a lot of friction that's on Tor, on the dark web, and we've seen, because of the security problems, because of law enforcement's entry into the dark web, because of the amount of friction that's on the dark web, we've seen developments over the past years of how criminals try to protect each other, how they try to establish a trust mechanism through review systems, through escrow systems, through PGP keys that are posted, through trusted sources that tell people which sites to go to so they aren't fished out by other criminals, things like that. At the same time, that creates a whole lot of friction on the dark web. It's extremely difficult to use that. You've got DDoS attacks out the wazoo on a lot of these dark web markets. And because of that, we have started to see a huge shift of criminals leaving the traditional dark web and using Telegram. Why would you use Telegram? Well, because it's encrypted end to end, because it's an app that downloads to your phone. You can run it on the browser, anything else like that. It's almost friction free, and it has a search engine. So it's very easy to find the content or the illegal substances or items that you're looking for. So you continue to see that unless a criminal is forced to change, they will not. We see the exact same thing with the way criminals buy and sell items online. When I was a criminal, we used a couple of precursors to today's cryptocurrency. They were called eGold and Liberty Reserve. Once those went out of fashion, basically the owners got indicted. We started to see the birth of cryptocurrency. First came Bitcoin. And as Bitcoin became popular, we saw Ross Ulbricht being the first real person that had a real use case for crypto, allowing criminals to buy and sell criminal goods and services on Silk Road, a criminal marketplace at that point in time. Most people did not understand that Bitcoin is absolutely traceable. They thought it was anonymous, but as they became more educated in Bitcoin, they started to understand. And as law enforcement became more educated, law enforcement became very good at tracing the transactions, figuring out who those people were that were sending that money. And that meant criminals had to change. It forced criminals to change. They could no longer use a public coin like Bitcoin that's easily traced. They had to find something else. So today, you see most criminal marketplaces use what's called a Monero. Monero is a privacy token. You cannot trace it. It's extremely effective. Law enforcement can't find out who the users are. So that is the token that's being used right now. It forced criminals to move over into that. There's something else. So as we're talking, understand that what I'm getting at, from a security point of view, you want to be that company, that individual, that if a criminal is going to attack you, you are going to you're going to force them to change their method of attack. All right. Most criminals won't do that. Most criminals, and here's why. When a criminal attacks you, there are only three motivations for that attack: cash, status, ideology. Cash-based attacks are the most common, 98% of which, all right? So most criminals are looking for the easiest access that gives them the largest return on that criminal investment, okay? So it's lowest hanging fruit. If you just put a modicum of security in place, if you're just doing something that will force whatever that technique is that that criminal is using, he's not going to change his technique. He's going to find a new target. That's a cache-based attack. A status-based attack is a little bit different. What you're doing with a status-based attack is you're trying to impress your criminal peers. So you're looking for more difficult security, but something that you can still do that gains the respect of every single person in your criminal community, because that respect equates to profit at the end of the day. So you got cash, you got status. Both of those together are still using known exploits. If you're forcing that criminal to change his method of attack, typically he will not hit you unless he's an idiot. He's going to find a target that allows him to use his established method of attack, and he's going to hit that target instead. He's going to leave you alone. Now you've got ideological types of attacks, which are far less common, but now those types of attacks, that guy does not care if he has to change his method of attack. But for the 98, 99% of attacks that are out there, what you're looking to do is you're looking to force that criminal, if he's going to attack you, you're looking to force that criminal to change his method of operation. Okay? Bear that in mind. Now, why I say that is these days we are very fortunate, and we're fortunate that it used to be with pen testing. You'd have to hire somebody and they would come in and they would do it like one time or once every 3 months or once every 6 months or just once period and tell you what the vulnerabilities were. And that would be it. Well, these days that's changed. These days, you're able to pen test an environment for a program to sit in an environment and actually scan all those vulnerabilities that are out there. That 90% plus of every single attack uses a known exploit. You're able to scan every single one of those vulnerabilities, see what the threat landscape looks like in your organization, plug those holes. Instead of knowing about it and not doing anything about it, you know about it and you are doing something about it. Because of that, that is absolutely forcing a criminal to change his method of attack. And because of that, knowing that 98, 99% of the attacks that are out there are cache-based or status-based, you know you are far less likely to be attacked. That's the message I'm sending today. That's what I think is important. And I don't think that a lot of people are getting that. A lot of people that are out there, a lot of the good guys, they don't understand the criminal mentality. They don't understand that, hey, yeah, we criminals, we work our asses off. We work our asses off to establish a very successful method to victimize you. And we typically don't change that as long as we're making money doing that. There's no need to fix what ain't broken. So bear that in mind. Bear that in mind. When you're out there, you're developing security to protect your organization, to protect yourself. The idea is a layered approach, absolutely, but it's also to force that attacker, if he will be to hit you, to force that attacker to change their method. Because when you do that, they will not hit. The conclusion: know your place. Know your place in the criminal landscape, because you have one. You absolutely do. The way that I will hit you absolutely depends on who you are and what you do. If you're an individual, the way that I'm looking to victimize you will differ if you're a CEO or working payroll versus working food service for 20 years. I'll still get you. Food service, I may set up new accounts, student loan fraud, open up bank accounts in your name, whatever like that. If you're CEO or payroll, I'm looking to business email compromise, get you to send me your employees' W-2s, something like that. I'll still hit you. If you're an organization, does your organization have data that I can breach the company, steal the data, resell on the black market? Or does it have data that I can lock down with ransomware and extort your company directly? Or is it both? Figure out what that attacker is looking for, design security around that, always with the idea that we are looking to force that criminal to change. Me, like I said, I have been blessed. I was given the opportunity to turn my life around. I took it, and today I lead a life that I damn well don't deserve. I don't, but I am damn grateful to have, and I work my ass off every single day to protect people and businesses from that type of person that I used to be. Um, I told you that criminals don't change unless they're forced to change. That's not only with criminal activity, but that's with turning your life around. You know, my force of change was my sister, was my wife, and then finally it was this guy from the FBI named Keith Malarski that he didn't even have. I sent him a letter. I sent him a message on LinkedIn. I was like, "Hey, man, I respect everything you did." He arrested a lot of people that I knew. Um, respect everything you did. I think you did a great job. No hard feelings. By the way, I'd like to be legal. And this cop, he reached out to me within 2 hours and took me in under his wing. He gave me references. He gave me advice. That's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about forcing change. It's sometimes it's just the human element that does that, especially when you're turning your life around. And you know, I took to that. I realized the opportunity that I've been given, and I took it seriously. And today I wake up working. I go to sleep working. And why I'm talking to you today is I really want you guys and ladies to understand that when I'm talking about forcing a criminal change, I'm not just saying that to be speaking up here. I'm saying it because that's the way this stuff actually works. Okay. Very few people understand that better than I do. I've been on the criminal side, top of the heap, and I'm very well respected in the cybersecurity industry these days as well. So please bear in mind what I'm saying. Take it to heart. Force those criminals to change, and you are going to be protected from 98, 99% of the attacks that are out there. My name is Brett Johnson. I'm going to close this out, and I want to thank you guys truly, truly for taking the time to listen to me. It's that because I firmly believe excuse me, if I wasn't given the opportunity to talk to you to people and then you took the time to listen to me, I really believe that I would be back in prison. So I'm very grateful for you taking the time to listen to me, and I truly want to give you value for your time. So please stay safe out there, stay secure, stay vigilant, and thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me today.
Wow. Thank you, Brett, for those powerful and eye-opening insights. Your real-world experience really drives home just how crucial it is to understand attackers and think like them to stay ahead. It would be great to hear in the chat how you're planning on taking Brett's insights back to your teams. Please share so others can benefit from your knowledge as well. Now let's take a short break. See you back here in 5 minutes.